All right, folks, welcome to According to Sam. This is episode 256. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. About a little more than 2 weeks out from the election. People are already voting and early voting. Going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. It looks like Trump has all of the momentum, which is forcing Kamala Harris out of hiding. Her campaign strategy, she's been campaigning since June. Her campaign strategy has been to appear in public as little as possible, and to run out the clock. This was literally a catchphrase that people were saying in the media over the last couple of weeks, is that if Kamala Harris could just run out the clock, she can win this thing. And that's when the honeymoon was still going on. She was still riding off the high, but things have changed. Things have changed significantly. I want you to take a look. We'll start with this clip. Shows you a little bit about how things have changed, and then we'll get into today's podcast. This is Harry Enton. He is the pollster for CNN. Take a listen to what Harry Enton says here.
I think there are a lot of folks, such as myself, who think that Donald Trump's unpopularity is baked in. But here's the deal. If you believe that Donald Trump has somehow become less popular over time, let me change your mind about that. In fact, he is more popular at this point in the campaign than he was at this point in the 2020 campaign or the 2016 campaign. Look, he's still underwater, right, with a negative 9-point net favorability rating. But that is higher than he was in 2020 at minus 12 points when he nearly won. And it is way higher than the minus 27 net favorability back in 2016 when he did win. So I think there's this real question in Kamala Harris's mind, in the campaign's mind, why is Trump more popular now than he was at this point in 2020?
That's a very interesting question. Why is Trump more popular now than he was in 2016? I mean, you think about what these guys did in 2016. Of course, he was unpopular. People didn't know anything about, what his presidency would be like. He was an unknown. He had never been in politics ever before. He was getting dogged by the media, fighting all the media lies. And then in 2020, he had already served 4 years. People had experienced a Donald Trump presidency. And then now, I mean, all the lies that you've been telling us and the media has been telling us since 2016, people are starting to realize that those are lies, that those are only scare tactics. And Donald Trump is a lot more popular, even though he's still below water, even though the media lies and the fake news and all the lies that you have told about him since 2015, when he started running, that he was a racist because he wanted to build the wall. Now Joe Biden's building the wall. That he said there were fine people on both sides and he embraced neo-Nazis. Now people are realizing that stuff was a lie. And that was all a lie. Even the January 6th stuff, people are realizing that the January 6th stuff that you guys told us was not on the up and up, and that it was all a lie. So yes, Trump is getting more popular. At the same time, listen to what Harry says about Kamala Harris.
2016, and I think that is why you're seeing the sharpening attacks, because they want to put him back down to here, or even there's no way that they're necessarily going to back down to here, but they want to make Trump more unpopular.
Listen to what he says here. That's the why they're sharpening. If you watch that interview that Kamala Harris did with Bret Baier, that's why she wanted to focus on Donald Trump and just Donald Trump is the root of all of your problems. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Harry Enton is explaining why the strategy is now, because Donald Trump's more popular. People see him as a viable president. They want to knock him back down here to this 27%, negative 27% unfavorable, or negative 12% unfavorable, because Donald Trump is getting more popular
than either point in 2020 or 2016.
So this could be what they're saying with regard to with Donald Trump. But could it have something also to do with what they're saying with their candidate, with Kamala Harris or something?
Yeah, look, Kamala Harris is more popular than Donald Trump. But Kamala Harris had her popularity rising once, of course, she became the presumptive Democratic nominee. Look, she was at minus 15 points back on July 17th, then minus 4 points on August 17th, then 1 point on September, plus 1 point. She was actually in positive territory a month ago, but she has fallen back down to -1. The momentum of Kamala Harris has stalled. And I think they feel like they have to change something that's going on in their campaign because they were seeing a rise and now it has stalled out. Look, she's still more popular than Trump. But look, Joe Biden was more popular than Trump, much more, and barely won. And Hillary Clinton was more popular than Donald Trump and lost. Being more popular than Trump isn't enough. She wants to continue to see her favorabilities rise, but in fact, they're going in the wrong direction.
So Trump has the momentum. That's what Harry's saying. Big Mo is on Trump's side. And not only is Big Mo on Trump's side, what you hear Harry saying is that down here, on July 17th, when shortly after she became the nominee, this is when the sugar high is. The sugar high. And so she is minus 15. And then this is around the convention time when she starts getting around the convention, minus 4. And then in September, +1. So she's going in positive direction. As she's trying to run out the clock, as she's doing her campaign events, friendly interviews and things like that. But as people started to get to know her, as she starts going out and doing these things, then her momentum starts to stall. So they're trying to figure out new ways to get the momentum back. So that's why she's going on Bret Baier. That's why she's talking about going on Rogan, which I don't believe is going to happen after the Bret Baier interview. So she's going out there more in these last weeks because she's trying to get the momentum back. But the problem is that the more she goes out, the more that people see her and get to know her, the less they like her. There is a reason that this woman, after campaigning in 2019, dropped out of the 2020 race before the Iowa caucuses. And she was polling in 5th place in California, in her home state of California. She was polling in 5th place here. There's a reason why. The more people know her, the more people get to see her, the less they like her. So we've been talking about the Bush-Clinton dynasty. We're going to get back into this, and I've been explaining to you the role that these three men played in the financial crisis that happened in 2008. And we're going to talk more about this today and why this is important. I've explained to you how the deregulation happened under Bill Clinton, George Bush's brother, who George Bush says that his mother, Barbara Bush, said that Bill Clinton's your 4th brother. Brother from Bush even calls him a brother from another mother. That Bill Clinton saw George Bush's father as the father he never had. This guy did all the deregulation in his administration. And then his brother comes in and his brother sets up the housing market. And then we're going to talk more about what Obama's role is. What is Obama's role in all this? Well, Obama let them all off. It was Obama who was running in 2008 saying that he's going to hold them accountable. He's coming in the transition of the crash and the loot job that these guys did. He's going to be in charge of the Justice Department. He's going to be in charge of holding these people accountable. And Obama's role is that he holds nobody accountable and he allows the cover up and this heist that these guys did. He allows it to go unpunished. So we've been talking about that, talking about how these guys deregulated everything. Robert Rubin, Larry Summers, who we explained in the last podcast, Larry Summers, when Obama comes in after running on this platform of radical change, Larry Summers becomes the head of Obama's economic team. He's running the entire economic policy. This guy, Larry Summers, who during the Clinton administration set the whole thing up. He was there setting the whole thing up. Obama, after running on change, brings this guy to run his entire economic policy and recovery. This guy. He brings this guy in to run his Treasury Department. This guy was right there with them in the 1990s, Timothy Geithner, and then Barack Obama brings Timothy Geithner on to be his Treasury Secretary. So the same economists and the same people that set up the crash during the Clinton administration, Obama brings them on to handled the recovery of the crash they created in his administration after running on change. So we were talking about all that, talked about how Bush created the housing bubble and how he was responsible for it, for telling, the private sector to lower their standards, get rid of the fine print. He did the down payment assistance with the plan of getting all these minority homeowners into homes. He wanted to get, 40,000 families is what it says here. But he even says here in this clip that we listened to last week that he wants millions. Hold on.
That we can do at the federal government. And the federal government obviously has to play an important role. And we will. We will. I mean, when I lay out a goal, I mean it. But we also have got to bring others into the process, most particularly the real estate industry. After all, the real estate industry benefits when people are encouraged to buy homes. It's in their self-interest that we encourage people to buy homes. And so one of the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit today is how to create a sustained commitment by the private sector that will have a powerful impact. First of all, we want to make sure that we help work to expand capital available to buyers, and as I mentioned, overcome the barriers that I've delineated, as well as provide the education component. In other words, this is not just a federal responsibility. That's why I've challenged the industry leaders all across the country to get after it for this goal, to stay focused, to make sure that we achieve a more secure America by achieving the goal of 5.5 million new minority homeowners.
5.5 million new minority homeowners. Minorities. Make sure you don't miss that. So that's what Barack Obama's cousin set out to do. And you notice the date here, May 2002. So, I mean, this is less than a year after 9/11. The economy was in shambles. He's taking us to war, and he's creating this housing bubble so he can show growth after cutting taxes, taking us to war. I've explained all of that to you, that Barack Obama's cousin, he is the one who told the private sector and the lenders to be predatory, is the word they were using. Predatory lenders. This guy told them to be predatory, to go out and get 5.5 million minority homeowners. We don't care if they can afford it or not. We don't care about if they're going to be able to stay in the home. I need to show growth right now. So he created the housing bubble. We talked about all that. We talked about how Obama ran on change in 2008 and how he was going to be changing from these guys. And he not only said that he was going to be changing from the path that these guys had put us on, he also said that that he was going to be holding the people that started the fire, the people that created the crisis. He was going to be holding them accountable. That's what he ran on when he ran on this platform of change in 2008. Played all those clips in the last podcast. But he didn't change. When he came in, like I said, I put Timothy Geithner in charge of Treasury. He put Larry Summers in charge of his economic recovery team. He kept on CIA Bob Gates from the Bush administration at the Pentagon. He brought Hillary Clinton on to run his State Department. There was no change. No change. How can you have change when you have the same people who created all of our mess, the wars, the crisis? You bring the same people on into your administration after running on this platform of change. There was no change.
Obama chose Timothy Geithner as Treasury Secretary. Geithner was the president of the New York Federal Reserve during the crisis, and one of the key players in the decision to pay Goldman Sachs 100 cents on the dollar for its bets against mortgages.
When Tim Geithner was testifying to be confirmed as Treasury Secretary, he said, "I have never been a regulator." Now that said to me, he did not understand his job as president of the New York Fed.
The new president of the New York Fed is William C. Dudley, the former chief economist of Goldman Sachs, whose paper with Glenn Hubbard praised derivatives. Geithner's chief of staff is Mark Patterson, a former lobbyist for Goldman. And one
so
of
the Goldman Sachs people he brings in, and you remember we
heavily involved in betting against the mortgage securities it was selling.
And we were telling you the podcast before last how Obama was making the distinction between Wall Street and Main Street, and how he was going to empower Main Street, rebuild the economy from up from the bottom up, from Main Street up, and he put all these Wall Street people in his administration. And Wall Street recovered first. Wall Street recovered. There's a case that could be made that Main Street still hasn't recovered. That Main Street still has not recovered from this crisis. I can make a case for that. Gary Gensler, Obama put as in charge of the Commodity and Futures Agency. I can make a case that Main Street still has not recovered. Even Obama says that. He said that in the campaign event that he did in Pennsylvania last week. There's a lot of people still hurting. I get it. I get it that a lot of people are still hurting. I'm the hopey changey guy, is what he says. Yes, Main Street is still hurting. These guys, they started to recover right away in the Obama administration. Wall Street, I can show you the numbers. Wall Street started to recover right away with the negative interest rates that Bernanke, with the QE, with the quantitative easing, with all the stimulus that Obama gave them. He bailed out Wall Street and left Main Street hanging, quite frankly. So Kamala Harris, in her interview with Bret Baier the other day, it's a complete disaster. I knew it was going to be a complete disaster. My only question was if Bret Baier was going to be a real journalist, or if he was going to let her off the hook. And thank God that Bret Baier decided that his integrity and his profession were more important than letting her off the hook. And he actually was a real journalist. And I knew if that was the case, then it was only going to exacerbate her problems with her momentum. And again, more people get to see her, and the more people get to know her, the less they like her. But I think this was an interesting part of the interview, because again, it goes back to her saying that she's the change agent and her commitment to change. And that's why I'm explaining the change that we got from Obama, which was no change. I want you to understand that you're going to get the same change from Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris does not represent change. Kamala Harris represents the status quo. She's going to bring in all the Wall Street people. This guy, Gary Gensler, they're already saying that this guy's going to be her Treasury Secretary. She's going to bring this guy in, this guy's currently Joe Biden's, he runs the SEC for Joe Biden. So Joe Biden, talking about this continuity, this guy was part of the long-term capital management derivative scandal in the 1990s when Brooks Lee Born was trying to regulate the derivatives. And Obama puts him in charge of the agency that Brooks Lee Born ran. And then now Joe Biden puts him in charge of the SEC. And Kamala Harris, the word on the street is that Kamala Harris is going to put this guy, Gary Gensler, in at Treasury. There's not going to be any change, people. There's not going to be any change. But listen to what she says she's talking about when she's talking about change. This is what she's talking about. Take a listen.
Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country. To divide our country.
We've been burdened by Donald Trump's rhetoric. No, baby. I haven't been burdened by Donald Trump's rhetoric. I've been burdened by grocery prices. I've been burdened by all these immigrants crossing the border. I've been burdened by Donald Trump's rhetoric. But listen to what she's saying. That's the only change that she's promising. I promise to change, to get rid of this guy. This guy who was president for 4 years. He's the cause of all of your problems. Your problems are not inflation and that you can't afford your bills and you have to go out and get a second job and you have to cut back on your way of living. Your problems are not, all the migrants and the crime. And guys, FBI, they have tried to quietly revise their crime statistics up, just to let you know. That's something totally different. But the crime, the inflation, and the migrant situation, the wars, that's not your problems. Your problems are this guy and his rhetoric from the last 8 years. That's what this woman is promising to change. Nothing else. That's the only thing that she's promising to change. I change getting rid of this guy who was president for 4 years. He's the cause of all of your problems. You're still going to get this. This ain't going to change right here. This ain't going to change. That's not going to change. This right here, that's not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is the fact that we've been burdened by the rhetoric of Donald Trump for the last 8 years. That's our burden. That's your burden, is Donald Trump's rhetoric from the last 8 years. That's the change she's promising. Are you kidding me, people? Are you kidding me?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70%.
That was the same rhetoric. I played the clip last podcast of Barack Obama on the night that he was elected. There's not a red America, there's not a blue America. We're all Americans. Let's all come together. He was going to bring us together. Obama was going to stop the division and the dividing. The guy divided the country, and his surrogates divided the country. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Divided the country more than ever. He not only didn't end the division, he exacerbated the divisions in this country. Obama did. And now she's coming in saying that Donald Trump's cause of all your problem and his rhetoric from the past 10 years is dividing us. No, we were divided in 2008 when Obama promised to unite the country and then continued to spend 8 years on dividing us, because it's divide and conquer. That's what it is. It's divide and conquer. They want us divided. Republican, Democrat, red, blue. Obama was all part of it. So that's why, of course, and he brought the racial part into it, which, was very effective, very effective. So he divided us, but he promised that he was going to unite us the same way that Kamala Harris is now saying that Donald Trump is, and his rhetoric from the past 8 years or that's your burden. And I'm going to unite us.
The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country
turning the page on rhetoric.
They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
Jeez. Wow, brutal.
Brutal. Madam Vice President.
Brutal. Watch this. Watch this.
Both know what I'm talking
I actually
about.
don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm
You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Look at his face, too. I actually don't. The hell are you talking about? What are you talking about, lady? You've been president, been part of the administration that's been in power for 3.5 years. The hell are you talking about, lady? What are you talking about? So, but she's trying to run the same play on us again. I've been telling you guys this for weeks, ever since she started, that they were going to try to run the same play. And I told you that there was going to be some significant problems that she would have running the play that Obama had. Obama came out of nowhere. Nobody knew who this guy was. He was running against his cousin from a different party. And he's an outsider that's coming in running on change. I mean, it made more sense that he could be a change agent. How the heck is she going to be running on change? Like Bret Baier saying, you're in office right now. So, I mean, that's a significant difference than what Obama, the situation that Obama was running against in 2008. But the other significant difference is that Obama was good. Obama could sit in an interview like this with Bret Baier and he was good. He wasn't fumbling around and making a fool out of himself. So that was the other difference, and a significant difference in why she's having a tougher time running the same play. But Obama ran on change, just like she is running on change you can believe in. He said that he was going to bring the change. And then he was elected, and we played the clip last night of what he said on the night that he was elected. Change has come to America. What you got to understand about Obama, too, is that when he was elected in 2008, the people also gave him a Congress, a Democratic Congress, that he could work with without any obstructions from Republicans. When Obama was elected in 2008 and the new Congress was sworn in on January 6, 2009, and then he was sworn in on January 20th of 2009, on January 21st, 2009, or even later that evening on January 20th, after he was sworn in on 2009, the Democrats could have done anything they wanted to do without any Republican blocking them. They had a 60-seat majority in the Senate, and Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. They controlled both houses of Congress with a 60 seats in the Senate. Could have done whatever they wanted to. Now, I want you to remember what Obama said about holding the people accountable. This is in when Obama is elected and sworn in, you're in the middle of this financial crisis. The country is in recession. We're engaged in 2 wars. The country is in a really, really dark place, and it was because of this financial crisis and the wars. And this guy runs on change. He's going to come in and change it all. I want you to remember what Barack Obama said when he gave his speech on the Senate floor during the bank bailout, which he voted for. And you got to understand that too, because later on, after he does the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which was $800 billion stimulus, as soon as he comes in February, he does the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, February 2008. And this was a huge stimulus. And a lot of people said this wasn't enough. People were complaining. That's what, going back to the clip that I played of Bill Clinton saying that, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris cared about the people. That's why they did the $1.9 trillion stimulus when they first came in, because Barack Obama's stimulus wasn't enough. $800 billion just wasn't enough when he did this stimulus. But a lot of people were reacting to this stimulus, and they were confusing it with the bank bailout. They were saying that it was a bank bail. A lot of this stuff, this stimulus did go to stabilize Wall Street, just like the TARP, which was the bank bailout. So, and like I said, if you want to know where this stimulus went, Obama's stimulus, just look at who recovered first. Main Street or Wall Street? Who got the stimulus? Did Main Street get the stimulus, or did Wall Street get the stimulus? Just look at who recovered first. Because whoever recovered first, whoever you wanted to recover first, Obama, is who you would have stimulated. So look at who recovered first, and then you'll know where this where the stimulus went. But people were calling it, confusing it with the bank bailout and saying that the American Recovery Reinvestment Act. And Obama would go around saying, no, this wasn't the bank bailout. I didn't do the bank bailout, which was TARP. But you did vote for the bank bailout because you were a senator. You did vote for the bank bailout. And this is what you said on the Senate floor when you voted for the bank bailout.
For their hard work. Now, the fact that we're even here voting on a plan to rescue our economy from the greed and irresponsibility of Wall Street and some in Washington is an outrage. It's an outrage to every American who works hard, pays their taxes, and is doing their best every day to make a better life for themselves and their families. And understandably, people are frustrated and they're angry that Wall Street's mistakes have put their tax dollars at risk, and they should be. I'm frustrated and angry too.
Really?
But while there's plenty of blame to go around, and many in Washington and Wall Street who deserve it, all of us have a responsibility to solve this crisis because it affects the financial well-being of every single American. There will be time to punish those who set this fire, but now's not the time to argue about how it got set, or did the neighbor sleep in his bed or leave the stove on. Right now we want to put out
what the hell does that even mean? It'll be time to punish those who set the fire, is what he says. It'll be time for those to punish those who set the fire, the financial crisis, the fire that these guys had to spend taxpayer money to bail these guys out. It'll be a time to punish those who set the fire. Well, that time was going to be when Barack Obama was sworn in as president and he controlled the Justice Department. And once he was sworn in, we already talked about what happened. He brought on all the people from the Clinton administration that did the deregulation. He brought them into his administration. These are the people that set the fire right here. It'll be time to punish those who set the fire. How are you going to punish those who set the fire when they're in your administration, bro? Explain that to me. Somebody explain that to me. How are you going to punish those who set the fire when they're right there in your administration? Huh? What a clown show. I can't believe we fell for this. But it was a good con. It was a good con they ran on us. Good con, for sure. We're not going to fall for it again, though. I mean, you'd have to be a moron to fall for it again. But no, there was no punishment of the people who set the fire. The people who set the fire were in his administration. So the first thing that Obama does when he comes in February, they do the major stimulus, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Nicknamed the Recovery Act, was a stimulus package enacted in the 111th U.S. Congress, signed into law by Barack Obama in February 2009. Developed in response of the Great Recession, the primary objective of this federal statute was to save existing jobs, create new ones as soon as possible. Other objectives were to provide temporary relief programs to affected by the recession, and to invest in infrastructure, education, health, and renewable energy. The approximate cost of the stimulus package was estimated to be $787 billion at the time of its passage. It was later revised to be $831 billion between 2009 and 2019. 2019. That's Trump's last year. The American Recovery Reinvestment was based on Keynesian economics. John Maynard Keynes. If you guys don't know who that is, he was an English economist who believed that federal stimulus was a good thing. That as much as the government can get involved in the economy when needed, that's basically what Keynesian economics is. And that was a huge debate during this time when Obama does the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, because a lot of people were against this stimulus. And we had just done $700 billion TARP with the TARP was the bank bailout. We had just done $700 billion bank bailout. And then to come just a few months later and do another $700 billion. This is when people started to realize what was going on with the debt. When this happened. So Obama does this stimulus when he first comes in. Second thing he does was the auto bailout. Okay, so the auto bailout, something you need to know about the auto bailout. Let's read a little bit about this. Beginning in the latter half of 2008, the global scale of recession adversely affected the economy of the United States. So I love the way they put this first sentence in here, that the recession adversely affected the economy of the United States. Of course, the recession affected the economy of the United States. That's what recession is. But this first sentence leads you to believe, and a lot of people believed, that the reason that Obama had to bail out the auto industry is because of the recession, because people weren't buying cars during the recession, and that's why Obama had to bail out the auto industry. Nothing can be further from the truth, as I'm getting ready to share with you. A combination of several years of declining automobile sales. It's a lie. And the scale of ability of credit. Now, this is true. And the scale of availability of credit led to a more widespread crisis in the United States auto industry. Then what happened? Why wasn't Ford included? If people weren't buying cars, a declining automobile sales, then why wasn't Ford included in the auto bailout? Why wasn't Ford included if it was because of declining automobile sales? Because it didn't have anything to do with declining automobile sales. This second paragraph. Following dramatic drops in automobile sales, they say it again here in this Wikipedia page, which is a joke. Following dramatic drops in automobile sales, two of the big three automakers, General Motors and Chrysler, requested emergency loan. So if it was a decline in automobile sales that needed this bailout, the reason why General Motors and Chrysler needed this bailout, then why was Ford not included? Why was it only two of the big three automakers? Huh? If it was automobile sales, the reason that Obama had to bail out, because this bailout, the auto bailout, had nothing to do with automobile sales. The reason that Obama bailed out General Motors and Chrysler is because General Motors and GMAC were doing home loans. And they had set up this finance company to help finance people into buying their vehicles, but then they expanded this bank into also helping people with home loans. And they did a lot of these risky loans. General Motors did a lot of these risky loans that George Bush told them to do to loosen the standards, to get more minorities into these homes. And GMAC and their finance company that was set up to help people buy cars got into the mortgage market. Ford didn't. Ford didn't get into the mortgage market. That's why Ford didn't need to be bailed out. But General Motors did, because General Motors was lending money to people that couldn't afford their mortgages, and they should have failed. When Mitt Romney said that it was a moral hazard for Barack Obama to bail out General Motors because they did this speculative loans and gave all of these loans for people for these homes, not for cars, for homes that they could not afford, and they loosened the standards like Bush told them, they should have failed. Obama shouldn't have bailed them out. Moral hazard. You're going to hear another person bring up moral hazard here in a minute. But moral hazard, in economics, a moral hazard is a situation where a economic actor, General Motors, has an incentive to increase its exposure or risk because it does not bear any full cost of risk because the taxpayers are going to bail them out. And that's what Obama did. This is the second thing he did. The auto bailout, bailed him out. And he said, who's advising him to do this? His economic advisors. His economic advisors are telling him to bail out GMAC after they acted irresponsibly. So that's the second thing that he did, the auto bailout. Ally Financial, you can see commercials about Ally Financial all the time. And the restructuring of GMAC, Ally Financial was the GMAC bank that were doing the home loans. They broke off and became Ally. But read a little bit of this. Ally Financial, previously known as GMAC, is a bank holding company incorporated in Delaware, headquartered at Ally Detroit Center. So Ally, that was part of the reorganization and bailing out GMAC, is that GMAC had to break off and become its own bank. It was restructured. But this would have happened anyway if they would have failed. They would have failed as they should have done because of their irresponsibility. This would have happened anyway, and it would have become another bank would have picked it up, and this is what should have happened. It was a moral hazard. Right here, history. The company was founded in 1919 by General Motors. So GMAC was founded in 1919 to help people finance their vehicles. Let's see here. Where's it talk about them getting into real estate? Right here. In 1998, who's president in 1998? Who's Fed chair in 1998? Who's Treasury Secretary in 1998? 1998, the company formed GMAC Real Estate. And in 1999, GMAC Mortgage acquired Ditech. In 2000, the company formed GMAC Bank, a direct bank. And in 2005, the company formed GMAC. So they started doing real estate in the 1990s. And then Bush came in the late 1990s. And then Bush came in, told them all to lower their standards to get all these minorities in. So that's why two of the big three automakers, and Ford was not included. It was just General Motors and Chrysler. That's why they were in trouble. It had nothing to do with auto sales. It had to do with them doing bad loans, mortgage loans, and they got in trouble with all the other banks. So these are the first two things. Again, Obama had a 60-seat majority in the Senate. They controlled the House of Representatives. Could have done anything in those first months, for that first year. Ted Kennedy, he doesn't die until August of 09. But even after Ted Kennedy dies, Barack Obama's friend, Deval Patrick, appoints Paul Kirk to Kennedy's seat. So they had a 60-seat majority for over a year, where they could have done anything that they wanted. I'm telling you what they did. They did the stimulus, American Recovery Reinvestment Act. They did the auto bailout. And then they also did Obamacare. So they started working on Obamacare immediately after. So the Tea Party, so the political ramifications of what was going on, the bank bailout, the auto bailout, the $800 billion in stimulus, all of that stuff is what is why the Tea Party launched. And the Tea Party launched as not only a movement that was against the current administration, which was the Obama administration when the Tea Party started to get off the ground, but the Tea Party was also a movement that was against the establishment Republican Party. You have to understand this, because you can't understand where Trump came from and how the Republican Party changed, and how Bush and all of the Bush Republicans are now supporting Kamala Harris, and even Dick Cheney is now supporting Kamala Harris, and Dick Cheney's daughter, and all those Rockefeller Republicans, and how they came at odds with the core of the Republican Party. You can't understand any of that without understanding the Tea Party. The Tea Party was a populist movement that came out of nowhere, 2008, 2009, when all of this government spending was going on, when all of this Wall Street grift was being exposed, and the Tea Party were small groups of people in their areas organizing, getting together to elect Tea Party candidates. And a lot of these Tea Party candidates were primarying these establishment Republicans and beating them. And that was the first step. The first step for the Tea Party were not to challenge Democrats. Well, it was to reshape the Republican Party internally. That we have to, before we can really fight the Democratic Party, the Republican Party has to be revamped. We have to reshape the Republicans. So you have people like Eric Cantor, who, I mean, they even, it became a new term after Eric Cantor lost, that if you're going to get primaried, you're going to get cantered. Because the guy that beat Eric Cantor came out of nowhere, this Tea Party candidate backed by Tea Party patriots, and they were taking out these establishment Republicans right and left. Even Ted Cruz ran against Rick Perry's lieutenant governor in Texas for that Senate seat, ends up beating. He was a Tea Party candidate. These Tea Party candidates are taking over the Republican Party. And then when Trump comes in, what you got to understand is that Trump realized and saw this populist movement that was happening in the Republican Party. I don't know how Mitt Romney became the nominee in 2012, but because this is the 2012 election was the first election that I voted for a Republican, and I voted for Ron Paul. Ron Paul was he's kind of the grandfather, the philosophical grandfather of the Tea Party movement, and he ran in 2012. He was unsuccessful, but Romney was unsuccessful. And what people need to understand is the reason that Romney didn't beat Barack Obama was not because in 2012, Barack Obama was such a strong candidate. He was a weak candidate. Barack Obama got 4 million fewer votes than he got in 2008 in 2012 because people like me, we weren't falling for the con anymore. But Barack Obama was a very weak candidate in 2012. And I do believe if Ron Paul got the nomination that he would have beat him. But Mitt Romney was an establishment candidate. He was not the right leader for this populist movement that had sprung up in the Republican Party from the Tea Party. And I knew that Trump was going to win in 2016, especially running against Hillary Clinton. I knew that Trump was the type of leader that could come and grab the reins of this populist movement that had already started forming in the Republican Party. And that's exactly what happened. That explains how Trump came in running against the establishment Republicans, giving voice to this populist movement, this Tea Party movement that had started in the Republican Party. And it was all part of and launched because of what had taken place with the housing crisis, the bank bailout, the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, the auto bailout, all of this, fiscal irresponsibility that we saw within government. Let's read a little bit of this Wikipedia page. Tea Party movement was an American fiscally conservative political movement within the Republican Party. That began in 2009. The movement was formed in opposition to policies. This is not true. The movement was formed in opposition to policies of Democratic President Barack Obama and was a major factor in the 2010 wave election. It wasn't a major factor in the 2010 wave election, but it wasn't formed in opposition to Barack Obama. It was formed in opposition to the fiscal responsibility, to the establishment, also to George Bush. I mean, Ron Paul was railing against George Bush and the Bush administration as much as he was railing against the Democrats and the Democratic administration. It wasn't just in opposition to Barack Obama, but that's the way Barack Obama and his surrogates painted it, that this Tea Party movement just came out of nowhere to oppose me just because I'm black. That's the only reason that the Tea Party movement came about is because a black guy's in president now. And these are all racist white people who are part of this Tea Party movement. And the only reason that they are protesting, the only reason that they're rising up now is because there's a black president. That's the way Barack Obama and his surrogates painted it. That's the narrative they told. But that's not true at all. This is a populist movement within the Republican Party that was against Wall Street, who you said you were against. They were against Wall Street. They were against the debt. They were against the Bush administration as well, against this entire dynasty. They were against. It wasn't just people that were against Barack Obama. So let's read this part. The Tea Party movement was popularly the Tea Party movement was popularly launched following a February 19, 2009 call by CNBC reporter Rick Santelli on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for a Tea Party. So look at the date on this. The Tea Party movement was popularly launched following February 19th, called by Santelli on Chicago Exchange. So February 2009, that's the same time that Obama does the American Recovery Reinvestment Act. And people were pissed about this. People were pissed that we had just bailed out the banks and spent $700 billion bailing out the banks. And then the first thing Obama does is he comes in and then creates another $700 billion stimulus. So what you got to understand is that Santelli, when he gives this this monologue or this interview that he does on the Chicago Exchange, which you're going to listen to, it's in response to all of this spending, all this money that's being spent, and what's happening to us with this financial crisis. So that's what Santelli is talking about here when he gives this speech on the Chicago Exchange. Take a listen to Santelli.
You know, the government is promoting bad behavior because we certainly don't want to put stimulus forth and give people a whopping $8 or $10 in their check and think that they ought to save it. And in terms of modifications, I'll tell you what, I have an idea. You know, the new administration's big on computers and technology. How about this, President and new administration? Why don't you put up a website to have people vote on the internet as a referendum to see if we really want to subsidize the losers' mortgages, or would we like to at least buy cars and buy houses in foreclosure and give them to people that might have a chance to actually prosper down the road and reward people that could carry the water instead of drink the water?
Hey, Rick,
that's a novel idea.
Hey, Rick, did you?
What? Who thought of that?
Yeah, they're like putting.
So everybody on the exchange floor, I mean, he's giving an interview on CNBC, and everyone on the exchange starts applauding him. What he's saying is that, yeah, we don't want to bail out all these people that got into loans that they couldn't afford and that made all these stupid fiscal decisions. Why are taxpayers bailing them out? This is the launch of the Tea Party right here, and the right-wing populist movement, which is where Trump comes from. This is the beginning of what eventually becomes the Trump presidency.
Might have a chance to actually prosper down the road and reward people that could carry the water instead of drink the water.
Hey, Rick,
that's a novel idea.
Hey, Rick, did you?
What? Who thought of that?
Yeah, they're like putty in your hands. Did you hear?
No, they're not, Joe. They're not like putty in our hands. This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills? Raise their hand. How about we all? President Obama, are you listening? How about we all stop paying our mortgage? It's a moral hazard.
Moral hazard.
Like mob rule here. I'm getting scared. I'm glad I'm.
Why don't you guys don't get scared, Joe. Bricks and They're already scaring you. You know, Cuba used to have mansions and a relatively decent economy. They moved from the individual to the collective. Now they're driving 54 Chevys. Maybe the last great car to come out of Detroit.
They're driving them on water too, which is a little strange to watch at
there
times.
You go.
Hey, Rick, how about the notion that Wilbur pointed out you can go down to 2% on the mortgage.
You could go down to minus 2%
and still have 40% and still have 40% not be able to do it. So why are they in the house? Why are we trying to keep them in the house?
Mr. Summers is a great economist, but boy, I'd love the answer to that.
Mr. Summers created the mess, buddy. I know Mr. Summers is a great economy. Who's he talking about here? Barack Obama's lead economist. I know Mr. Summers is a great economist. Actually, he's the guy who set up the crash, buddy.
Jason,
you get people fired up.
Jason, you want to?
We're thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
What are you dumping in? What are you dumping in this time? Housing,
We're going
cars?
to be dumping in some derivative securities.
So he says that he's the first person who calls for the Tea Party. This is the beginning, the launch of the Tea Party. He says we're going to bring a Tea Party here to Chicago. And she says, what are you going to be dumping? And he says, we're going to be dumping Tea Party, or we're going to be dumping derivative securities. The derivative securities, because the derivative securities is what caused the crash. And these guys stopped Brooksley Born from regulating the derivatives in the 1990s under this president. And this guy says he was going to come in and hold them all accountable. So there was also a left-wing populist movement that sprung out of this financial crisis. It didn't come about until 2011, but the Occupy Wall Street movement was the left-wing's response to all of, just like the Tea Party. Just like the Tea Party, which you just heard Santelli say, the reasons that the Tea Party came about and were formed, it all had to do with this Wall Street grift, this fiscal irresponsibility that had led to the financial crisis, people losing their homes, the hurting and everything that was going on because of that. The Tea Party was the right wing's response, and then this Occupy Wall Street was the left wing's response. I want to read a little bit of this Wikipedia page. Occupy Wall Street was a left-wing populist movement against economic inequality, corporate greed, and big finance, and influence of money and politics that began in Zuccotti Park, located in New York City's financial district, and lasted for 59 days. Not very long, pretty short. I wonder why it ended. So it was located not only in the financial district, there were all of these satellite Occupy Wall Street, encampments that were taking place all over the country. The motivations for Occupy Wall Street largely resulted from the public distrust in the private sector during the aftermath of the Great Recession in the United States. There were many particular points of interest leading up to the Occupy movement that angered populist and left-wing groups. For instance, the 2008 bank bailouts under George Bush, which Barack Obama voted for, utilized congressionally appropriate taxpayer funds to create the TARP, Troubled Assets Release Program, which purchased toxic assets from failing banks. So Occupy Wall Street was motivated by the same things that the Tea Party were motivated by. The U.S. Supreme Court, so that's not important. Let's see. The protest gave rise to wider Occupy movement in the United States and other Western countries. They even had Canada Occupy Wall Street because this had a global effect on this banking crisis. When Lehman Brothers went down, it had a global effect. Occupy Wall Street slogan, "We are the 99%. We are the 99% refers to income inequality in the United States between the wealthiest 1% and the rest of the population. That's your Wall Street, Main Street distinction that Barack Obama made. The 99% and the wealthiest 1%. So what happened to this movement? Why didn't it last very long? All right, let's go down here and see what happened. What happened to Occupy Wall Street? All right, come on down here. Government crackdowns. Government crackdowns. This is what happened to Occupy Wall Street. The government cracked down on the left-wing populists. Whose government? Barack Obama's government, y'all. The guy who ran on change. His government cracked down on this left-wing populist movement. As the movement spread, the United States Department, Barack Obama's Department of Homeland Security began keeping tabs on protesters under the pretext that the protesters was potential locus of violence. Is that locus? Yes. A potential locus of violence. So DHS started spying on the protesters and went after them. Following this, there was a DHS report entitled Special Coverage, Occupy Wall Street, dated October 11, observed that mass gatherings, this is the protest. You have the right to protest in this country, constitutionally, as long as you're doing it peacefully. This document from DHS, Obama's DHS, observed that mass gatherings associated with public protests and movements can have disruptive effects on transportation, commercial and government service, especially when staged in major metropolitan areas. The DHS kept file on the movement and monitored social media. On December 21st, 2012, Partnership of Civil Justice obtained a public U.S. government document revealed that over a dozen local FBI, Obama's FBI, field officers and DHS, Obama's DHS, and other federal agencies monitored Occupy Wall Street despite labeling it a peaceful movement. They knew it was peaceful, but they kept spying on these people. Report in May 2014 declassified documents showed extensive surveillance. So the Obama administration, I don't have time to go into how the Obama administration cracked down on this populist movement that was in a response to what was going on Wall Street after running on change, after running on tackling Wall Street, after saying he was going to rebuild the economy from the bottom up. There was no change at all. I was telling you in the last podcast or the podcast before that, how Obama even extended his cousin's tax cuts. Okay. So, I mean, again, I don't have a problem with tax cuts. I love cutting taxes, cut taxes for sure. But this guy ran in 2009 or in 2008. This was part of the change, that those tax cuts that Bush did, those bad tax cuts, he cut taxes for everyone. Obama signs bill to extend Bush's tax cuts. And there was absolutely no change. The only change you got from Bush to Obama, you got black instead of white establishment. Bush represented white establishment and Obama represented black establishment. And that's what you got. That's the change you got. And that's the change that Kamala is promising. What change are you going to bring? Oh, we're going to just change Donald Trump's rhetoric. The rhetoric from Donald Trump. People, I hope you're smarter than this. Come on. Please don't let me down. I have a couple of weeks left. Do everything you can. I'll be back on Monday. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.